I didn't realize my marriage was ending when my wife packed her bags. It ended months earlier, the day I lost my business. No shouting, no drama. Just a slow, uncomfortable silence that replaced the respect in her eyes. For 20 years, I was the man who handled everything. Bills, problems, emergencies. I was reliable. And reliability looked a lot like love. Then one bad month became two. Clients stopped calling. Money stopped moving. And something else changed too. The way she listened to me. The way she looked past me instead of at me. She said, "It's just temporary." She said, "We'll be fine." But support has limits, and mine were measured in bank statements. That was the moment I understood something I wasn't ready to accept yet. I wasn't loved for who I was. I was valued for what I provided. And the day I stopped providing, I stopped mattering. At first, I treated it like a setback, a bad season. Something every man faces at least once. I woke up early anyway, updated my resume, made calls, sent emails, followed leads that went nowhere. I told her about my plans in detail, new ideas, possible partnerships, ways to rebuild what I had lost. She nodded, said she believed in me. But belief without warmth feels empty. She stopped asking how the search was going, stopped sitting with me in the evenings, started filling the silence with her phone, her shows, her own world. I told myself she was just stressed. That pressure changes people. What I didn't see was that she wasn't worried about us. She was adjusting to life without relying on me. And while I was fighting to recover what I lost, she was quietly preparing for a future where I wasn't needed anymore. The harder I tried, the smaller I felt. Every interview rejection stayed with me longer than it should have. Not because of the job, but because of what it did to the air between us. I stopped talking about my days. She stopped asking. When I mentioned stress, she said I was overreacting. When I mentioned fear, she said I needed to stay positive. Positivity became a requirement, not support. I noticed how she compared me to others, friends' husbands, men who were doing well. She didn't say it directly, but disappointment has a language of its own. I wasn't failing because I wasn't trying. I was failing because effort no longer had value. Results did. And the more I struggled to rebuild my footing, the more invisible I became in my own home. That's when I understood something quietly terrifying. Losing the business was hard. Losing her respect was fatal. The change wasn't loud. It was subtle. And that's what made it hurt more. She stopped asking for my opinion, stopped including me in decisions that used to be ours. Bills were paid with sighs. Conversations ended early. I noticed how she corrected me in front of others, how jokes at my expense stopped sounding playful. She started saying things like, "You wouldn't understand right now," or, "Let's talk about this when things are better." When things are better became a moving target. I wasn't angry. I was shrinking. I tried to compensate, cooking more, fixing things, staying useful in ways that didn't require money. But usefulness without authority feels like charity. That's when I realized the role I was sliding into. Not partner, not equal, but a temporary inconvenience. And once someone starts seeing you that way, love doesn't disappear instantly. It erodes, quietly, relentlessly. I told myself this phase would end if I worked harder, if I adapted faster, if I became someone she could respect again. I took short-term work, projects below my level, jobs I never imagined I'd accept, just to prove I wasn't giving up. I came home exhausted but hopeful, ready to talk, ready to share progress. She listened, politely, like someone humoring a story they've already stopped believing in. There was no encouragement, no "I'm proud of you," just a quiet distance that made every effort feel smaller. I realized then that rebuilding alone is possible, but rebuilding while being silently judged is destructive. I wasn't asking her to fix anything. I just needed to know I wasn't falling alone. But loneliness hits hardest when you're not actually by yourself. And that's when I began to understand something painful. Trying to become enough for someone who's already checked out will only teach you how invisible you've become. The shift became obvious the day she said, "I just need you to get back to how you were." Not who I was, how I was. When I was earning, confident, predictable. Support turned into pressure. Patience turned into timelines. How much longer will this take? When will things go back to normal? What's your plan if this doesn't work? Every question carried the same message. My value now had an expiration date. She stopped defending me to others, stopped saying we're figuring it out, started saying he's going through something. I felt like a problem she was waiting to solve or remove. That's when it hit me. Love, that depends on performance, isn't love. It's a contract. And I was no longer meeting the terms. I wasn't falling apart because I lost my income. I was falling apart because I realized the support I thought was unconditional had fine print I never read. The conversation didn't start as a fight. It rarely does. She said we needed to talk realistically about the future, about expectations. She spoke calmly, almost rehearsed, said she was tired of uncertainty, tired of waiting. Then she said the sentence that finally broke the illusion. I need stability. I can't live like this. I asked her what this meant. She didn't answer directly. She talked about stress, about fear, about how hard it was for her. And in that moment, I understood something devastating. My struggle was an inconvenience. My effort was irrelevant. My presence was negotiable. I wasn't being judged for failing. I was being evaluated for replacement. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, but because I realized I was already alone in a marriage I was still trying to save. She didn't say she wanted to leave. She didn't have to. I noticed it in the way she planned her days, without me in them. In how she talked about the future using I instead of we. In how my opinion became optional. She started spending more time outside the house, more time unavailable, less time explaining. I didn't accuse her of anything. I didn't need proof. You can feel when someone has emotionally moved out. The hardest part wasn't the distance. It was the clarity. I wasn't competing with another man. I was competing with the idea of a life where I was no longer a risk. And I lost. Not because I stopped trying, but because she stopped believing trying was worth it. That's when I finally accepted the truth. She wasn't waiting for me to recover. She was waiting for permission to leave. She chose a normal afternoon. No drama, no tears. She said she couldn't do this anymore, that she needed peace, that she had to think about her future. I asked if there was someone else. She shook her head. And I believed her. Because it didn't matter. She wasn't leaving for another man. She was leaving from uncertainty. She said she still cared about me, that this wasn't my fault. But when someone leaves you at your lowest, fault becomes irrelevant. I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I had already done enough fighting, and none of it had saved us. She packed slowly, methodically, like someone leaving a place they had already mourned. When the door closed, the silence wasn't painful. It was final. It took time to understand what really happened. Not weeks, months. Losing the business hurt. Losing the marriage humbled me, but losing the illusion changed me. Mom, I rebuilt slowly, quietly, without announcing progress to anyone who once doubted me. And something unexpected happened. The fear that once controlled me disappeared, because I had already lived through the worst and survived it. I realized I wasn't abandoned because I failed. I was left because my value was measured in outcomes, not character. That wasn't love. That was convenience. Today, I don't chase the validation. I don't explain my struggles to people who only respect success. I learned that real partnership doesn't ask, "What do you provide right now?" It asks, "Who are you when everything falls apart?" Losing everything showed me exactly who I was married to. But more importantly, it showed me who I am. And that lesson was worth every loss.